So what farmers have been manually doing for decades, we saw growers spending weeks slowly driving through their fields using hand clickers to count live trees or trees that might be missing, such as gaps. Um, this realization was is there just has to be a better way. And while it's not quite like trying to count grains of a sand on a beach. What was very clear was it was just so inefficient and so inaccurate that this was a precise area, or I should say, this is a prime area for precision agriculture to really try to provide a better chance. We just knew there had to be a better way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wisenetix Podcast episode. As usual, we have great people here, great leaders sharing their work with us and the impact they are having in the industry in agriculture. So if you're not subscribed yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button and follow us to be updated on the latest content and on our latest interviews. Today, we're going to be diving into the transformative role of precision technology and digitalization in agriculture. We have as a guest speaker today, Matthew Donovan. He's the CEO of Agriculture Intelligence, and he's going to be sharing some insights about how technology is reshaping the landscape of farming and sustainability. Welcome, Matt.
Well, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Matt, we had the opportunity to meet before. We had some conversations, and you shared some very interesting perspective about the impact of technology, not just in the future, but in the present, now in agriculture. What agriculture is going through now, it's what we have seen in other industries in the past. So we're going to be covering a little bit about it. But just for us to start, could you share a little bit more about your journey with our listeners, about yourself, and how did you and your team started working in precision agriculture? And what led you to focus on, the crops that you're focusing today?
Sure. So I have a background in commercialization of software with 25 years of experience. And my co-founder is Dr. Yannis Ampetzidis, who's a professor at the University of Florida and kind of a leading voice in the use of the suite of sort of deep learning technologies and what's generally described as AI's use in agriculture. But it's kind of the journey started with the simple but powerful realization. This is, imagine trying to count every tree or measure every tree inside of a grove or an orchard that takes an hour to drive across, at a slow pace. But this is a very large scale problem, or it's a scaled problem. And just imagine trying to do that. So what farmers have been manually doing for decades, we saw growers spending weeks slowly driving through their fields using hand clickers to count live trees or trees that might be missing, such as gaps. This realization is there just has to be a better way. And while it's not quite like trying to count grains of a sand on a beach, what was very clear was it was just so inefficient and so inaccurate that this was a precise area, or I should say, this is a prime area for precision agriculture to really try to provide a better chance. We just knew there had to be a better way. So with Dr. Ampetzidis' background in agriculture science and my background in software development, we were lucky that Dr. Ampetzidis had built out the kinds of technologies that we could do this work from above using drones and eventually plane-based images. And we really could provide a full platform, which we've gone to patent. So now we have a patented platform that's basically a lot more accurate. It's much faster, and it's cheaper. And ultimately, the goal here is to get a grower towards actionable intelligence. And actionable intelligence is really several different things. And we found that we could do this best, at least with tree-based agriculture, And actionable intelligence is things that are accurate, they're reliable and consistent, that they're timely, and they're relevant. So actionable intelligence is really what underlies what we think is a valuable precision agricultural tool or system, is that it has to drive towards being accurate, consistent, and reliable, being timely, and being relevant. So it has to have all four of those components. And our primary flagship platform, um, which we'll talk about a little bit more, really aims toward delivering actionable intelligence to the tree agriculture space.
That's awesome. So, just for our audience to understand, and you mentioned that you guys use from UAVs, drones, and other geospatial imagery technologies to deliver precision insights, the precision data on how their crops are growing, right? Their trees mostly. Can you walk us through the core of this technology and how they provide insights to growers? Which sorts of insights? How does that work?
So our platform's called AgroViews, but you kind of think of our technology like taking Google Maps meets an MRI for tree crops. So just like a doctor would need different types of scans and metrics and analytics to monitor what's happening inside your body, which is a complex system. We use various types of imagery and other analytic approaches to understand what's happening in the very complex system that is an agriculture growing field, whether it's a citrus grove or an almond orchard or whatever. Like these are very complex systems, just like the human body is. So, with a nearly fully automated process, our platform, AgroView, it takes thousands of raw image files that might come from something like a drone, which are very popular and they have a very specific use for us. We take thousands of those image files, and then in an automated way, we organize all those raw image files. We build out one large visible file, and then we use various AI models to count the trees that are present, count the trees that are missing, and then AI model that will take every single tree and measure the height, the canopy area, and the leaf density, as well as, depending on the type of data we get, we can even provide and analyze different nutrient levels, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the sort of the fat, carbohydrate, and protein of the tree world, as well as 8 micronutrients into management zones, which is a big leap forward for tree-based agriculture. So it's like giving farmers or growers kind of an X-ray vision, if you will. That they can now, using AgroView, they can see things that would have been impossible to detect or accurately calculate by just walking or slowly driving through their fields as they've done for so many years. So it's important that we're able to do something much faster, more accurately, and really at a fraction of the time, and a fraction of the cost of the traditional methods. And as for crops, we focus mostly on tree crops, as I mentioned. So citrus, our primary interest has started with citrus, but we're interested in almonds, avocados, olives, things like that. And our most recent innovation is now taking, drones are terrific, and doing the nutrient analysis, for example, requires a drone. But we've been working on using AI to enhance imagery. So we've taken lower resolution plane-based images, which can cover a lot more area. So we had this still problem of scale that we're really solving the problem of scale. AgroView really addresses problems of scale in the physical space, the big data aspects of things. So as we want to be able to continue to deliver actionable intelligence, which again, accurate, consistent, reliable, timely, and relevant, we sort of went up in altitude towards a fixed wing aircraft to get images from plane. The benefit of which is it covers so much more scale than a drone can possibly cover. The slight disadvantage is the raw imagery is actually comes at a lower resolution because the altitude of the plane is higher. But what we did is we've been working on some super resolution technology to take those lower resolution images from a plane and transform them into drone quality resolution. So we've already done it with planes, and we're starting to increase our altitude. That is, we're getting interested in some of the other geospatial image platforms, like an orbital balloon platform, and ultimately working our way up towards the low Earth orbiting satellites, which again don't have good enough resolution to get to the quality of result we have with drones or planes, but eventually that's what we see as a how to tackle the physical space, the scale issue of the physical space, so that we can speed up these time frames, make something timely, and continue to deliver that actionable intelligence that has not only timeliness and relevance, but a high level of accuracy as well.
I loved how you connected, like when Google Maps made like MRI
Right.
analogy. That makes a lot of sense. And you're absolutely right. Like the capacity that you have with someone, I don't know, a farmer driving through their farming, trying to identify where are problems with a specific trees, that can take a lot of time and effort. So you guys are basically helping to target and be able to tackle the specific problems and at least have a diagnostic of where are the problems so you can go directly on them. That's very interesting.
All very, very easy to see on a Google Map like interface, where you turn the trees on and off. You can look at the heights and different sizes into multiple selections. You can spin the map around. You can, move the map in ways that in some ways Google Maps doesn't quite work, but it's really kind of that delivering the result in a way that is very accessible. And that's what AgroView really, really accomplishes.
Interesting as well, like what AI can do about getting those low resolution images and basically generating more pixels that make sense based on artificial intelligence and giving you a clear picture.
Yep.
I'm a designer, so for a long time in my life, I suffered in a very different situation, but I suffered with low resolution images. And today I look at the tools that you have and what you can do from a low resolution image, having something much more detailed, and it's incredible. It's great. And so you mentioned there's a lot of things you guys can measure and evaluate through this imagery, and even nutritional aspects. Is everything measured and calculated by the image of the trees, or do you also have some visualization of, I don't know, soil or anything like that? How does that work?
Yeah, there's sort of two aspects of what AgroView does. It uses imagery, like RGB imagery, visual imagery. And with that visual imagery, it can count all the trees. It can count where there's missing trees. And with that visual imagery, it can actually measure the height, canopy area, and the leaf density, which is a basic measure of greenness or health. But with a multispectral data set, which will be the RGB bands, the normal things our eye can see, as well as two additional bands of information, that's how we can measure the nutrient levels, which we've done for citrus trees. And the big approach here is it is a leaf-based. It's not a soil-based nutrient analysis, but it's a leaf-based expression. It's basically like a report card of what nutrient uptake is actually occurring. Mm-hmm. It's like you can be doing soil amendments or fertigation or whatever the practices might be in the grove or the orchard is. Our leaf-based analysis uses a multispectral drone data set so that it can say, hey, here's what's actually being expressed out of the leaves. And that process has been put through peer review and published in some global agriculture journals to show that how accurate that process is, that it is as accurate as sending off the leaf samples to sort of bag tag, send it to the lab and wait a few weeks for the result. But of course, with the drone-based data upload, we can get a result that's just as accurate, but we can do that quicker. And with nutrients, whatever practice they want to put in place, whether it's a foliar spray, soil amendments, whatever action that needs to be taken, the sooner that grade card is available, the sooner that an informed decision can be made and the adjustments to the cultural business practice in the field can be made.
That's incredible. And how scalable is this technology? Do you see it expanding? I know it's not the focus not now, but do you see it expanding to other sorts of crops? From, I don't know, I think we talked about coffee, for example, or even, I don't know, any application of this technology to row crops in the future. How do you see this?
Yeah, AgroView as a platform is incredibly scalable. It's a cloud-based architecture that in many ways has several very agnostic parts, like the assembly of the images in a fully automated way, the upscaling or the super resolution of those images. That doesn't have anything to do with the crop. That's really about getting a very clean data set that can then be analyzed by an AI model. But we can quickly expand our coverage to new types of crops and even new crop regions pretty quickly. We can deliver a new crop profile. For example, we can deliver a new crop profile in about 6 to 8 weeks for the basic analysis, which is the tree and gap counts, the height, canopy area. It's a longer process to do nutrient analysis, just because you have to do that through an entire harvest. But even after 9 months, we can have nutrient analysis on any crop. So it's a little bit like a universal translator, a translator can learn a new language, while AgroView can be trained to understand different crop types. And yes, we're looking to expand into other crops. I mentioned a few before, like almonds and avocados and sort of the fruit and nut tree space. But it's very adaptable. So whether it be coffee plantations in Brazil or olive groves in Spain, the fundamental principles remain the same. Of course, a big part of being able to expand into other crops like coffee and row crops or whatever crop is actually what actionable intelligence are you trying to deliver? So for coffee, it's more of a bush crop. It doesn't need a tree count, but there might be a higher value placed on the measure of greenness, the leaf density. That may be a key aspect. Or instead of counting the tree itself, it may be calculating the overall area of the row of the bush of coffee that's grown to identify if there's any major gaps or coverage gaps. So each of these models, the great part about what AgroView can do is, and why it's so scalable, is we can look at what a coffee grower or a coffee stakeholder, because it's not just about the grower. We've learned is that there's other stakeholders like crop insurers, for example, and they have a very vested interest in the health of that crop for a different reason. If they need to insure that crop in the case of a loss, for example, that they still need this information. So the crop itself will dictate what specific metrics are required. So the great part about AgroView is we can say, okay, what are those characteristics? What are those things that can be visually determined? What are those metrics and measurements? And what are the scales of those measurements? And how can we visualize that best? So we can create the crop profile that not only looks at that raw data set, because the image shows what the image shows, but that model can look for exactly what the coffee grower or the coffee insurer might need to see. So whether it's density levels or coverage areas or any other aspects of that individual crop, that's easily enough for us to adapt in the software space so that we can deliver it as a software update. And we already have the map, we already have the space in AgroView where that information is displayed, and we simply are displaying the coffee insurance or the coffee specific information, whether that's being viewed by the grower or the insurer. It's still a valuable, actionable piece of information. Again, it's accurate for coffee. It's reliable and consistent. It's timely. And the relevant part of actionable intelligence is really where the crop specific details comes out, is that it's relevant to that specific crop's needs. So that's all in place in AgroView. It's just a matter of expanding with new customers into these different crop spaces.
So we're looking at a technology that has in its core, its principle, the capacity of a huge scale image generation with high precision, infinite options of how we do it and how we apply it to different crops and things.
This is true. Yes.
And you mentioned this. We covered a little bit about this, about the importance, about, for example, you don't need to take your car and drive through your land to identify the problems. But can you share some more other tangible insights and impacts that this technology has had on farmers and stakeholders? Another thing you mentioned, for example, insurance. What are those takeaways?
Yeah, indeed. We're working here in the U.S. We're in the U.S., but we're working with major crop insurers here and growers, and we're seeing some very good results. I would say an example of one of the biggest impacts is what we call time to intelligence. Sort of internally, it's just that speed of the result. I mean, if you can go out and fly a drone in one day, upload it the next day, our AI models run, we see that the time to a grower or insurer getting some intelligence can be as fast as 72 hours. For example, one of our clients was able to reduce the inventory reporting time, which the traditional practice of going out with a car or a truck and doing an inventory manually using, handheld clickers and clipboards and then reporting that back, just the time of driving up and down through each row was taking over a month. So from 1 month to effectively 3 days or 1 week at the worst, that covers 1,000 acres. This is a huge impact. So that big impact for any of our customers is the time to intelligence, the time to actionable intelligence, so that if a decision is needing to be made or an action is needing to be taken, that the speed with which that can happen is just the biggest tangible impact. So for our insurers, like in the United States, we have contracts with several of the larger insurers. We're bringing accuracy to levels that it was not possible before. And that's a major impact to the risk that they have to manage for a crop insurer. For a grower, they would have a more accurate inventory. And inventory is a fundamental aspect of any business. Mm-hmm. Even if you run a small coffee shop, if you don't know how many cups you need, you can't serve your customers. So, it's more complicated in agriculture, but understanding the inventory of trees you have for a grower and having a more accurate understanding of your inventory, it enables you to make other decisions. So for both crop insurers and growers, that time to intelligence and the accuracy of what we bring are sort of two of the biggest impacts. And really, accuracy is fundamental towards this commonly used phrase of precision agriculture, in the sort of, put that in air quotes, because it's an often used term, but it means many different things. But fundamental to doing anything related to precision agriculture is a level of accuracy, and then the level of consistency and reliability, and then the timeliness of being able to see something, and then the relevance of that. And that gets us back to the time to actionable intelligence, so that speed of an accurate, consistent, timely, and relevant result. Those are the tangible impacts we see. And they come in the form of the time on their calendar being reduced from 1 month to 1 week, or even several days. The accuracy of things, the error rate being 25% down to 5%. those are two major impacts into both growers, crop insurers, and other stakeholders that might be making a decision about the status of the grove or the orchard for this specific type of crop. So those are sort of one another just a tangible example is a replanting. The accuracy of our tree counting model is extends to the accuracy of the tree counting of where there's missing trees. So a replant strategy and submitting an accurate nursery order is another tangible area for a grower. So nursery orders, they're really a supply chain issue, and it's not uncommon for when a grower of any kind of tree or fruit or nut crop is going to put a nursery order in. Is that nursery order could be 6 months, it could be 8 months, it could be 12 months. So if you get an inaccurate delivery of the plants you need to replace the missing plants or trees, and it takes 6 or 9 months, you get kind of the double it's a double whammy, if you will. So using our technology, we've been able to work with growers to provide a very accurate count of where there are missing trees or gaps in their groves or their orchards, which makes the nursery ordering process as accurate as possible. And along the way, if they know where the gaps are, it helps them organize their planting strategy. So again, we get back to dealing with scale. You could have a 40, 50, 70, 100 acre plot, which in hectares is whatever it might be for those international listeners. You get the point is that knowing where those missing trees are more dense allow you to organize your planting in a more systematic way, that in the southeast portion of this particular field in this grove is where most of the gaps are, so that they can do logistics planning that makes more sense to make the equipment come in from that side of the operation as opposed to taking a longer route. So there are these little things about knowing how many gaps there are and where those gaps that are located that have multiple different effects on the grower themselves. And those effects are all tangible, right down towards the labor costs, the fuel costs of putting the truck in the field in the right place, putting the people in the field in the right place to get the maximum impact from their replant, from having a more accurate order, from doing that very quickly and understanding that they're in the nursery order line in front of people who had to take longer to do a similar type of gap count or gap inventory assessment. So in summary, it's just more accurate information, faster decisions, better planning, big impacts to operational logistics. And ultimately, a lot of that adds up to a more sustainable farming practice, not just for the environmental aspects, but just the sustainability that the business can continue to operate.
That's awesome. As you were explaining, I just remembered this story. My brother-in-law, they are exploring some new areas in Brazil and planting, new areas for them. It's not the main areas where we grow soybean, for example. And it's new land. The soil is not prepared. The access to good equipment and machinery is not the best because it's not like a region known for it. And they were just struggling with it because he was just telling me about how they had to go through all the rows and count all the plants with the clicker, all the soybean. And I was like, okay, that's a hell of a work. And but moving forward here, Matt, one of the things that we discussed on our first conversation was the impact and the importance of digitalization as a game changer, right? In agriculture, for agriculture. It's something that we've seen in other industries, and we're seeing it now, the digitalization of the physical space. That's what we're seeing in agriculture. Can you elaborate how, I know we could talk about this for hours, but how do you think this will transform the industry, and why is it critical for not only the future, but the present?
Yeah, we could literally have an hour-long podcast on this topic alone. but I would say this, agriculture is part of the physical world, and we are at the very, very beginning of the digital revolution of the physical world, the digitization of the physical world. This digitization or digital revolution has happened in other industries, as you mentioned, for example. And so the listeners can think about this. For example, in media, we used to have newspapers and magazines, and then we had digital media like websites and wired news. And then, several years ago, it's now even evolved into social media. So the media landscape has been dramatically impacted by digital revolution or digitization. And now that change in digitization of the media space is impacting every aspect of our life. I mean, it's shaping ideas, opinions, buying trends. There's so forth and so on. In retail, we used to have physical stores. Everybody used to go to malls, but now we have online stores and Amazon and things delivered to our door. Again, the digital revolution in the retail space has transformed how we interact entirely with the products, the brands that we purchase, all the way down to having it dropped off on our doorstep. Banking is similar. We used to have physical branches. Now we have online banking. The automotive industry, which is a crossover a little bit into where we are in agriculture, is because the automotive industry, we traditionally had bought cars, but in dealing with moving around the physical world we live in, we are now buying rides. And we've seen the rise of Uber and other ride sharing programs that are really a marketplace of, there's some riders here and some drivers there, and the technology, the digitization pairs the two of them together and gets the rider what they want, which is, I need to get from A to B. And that's really what we're seeing with every digital revolution. We typically see several key things, and a handful of them are always pretty typical, which is the general higher productivity of the people involved, both the potential input or output, the worker or the consumer. We usually see a higher productivity. There's usually a dramatic lowering of cost over time. Those two things usually stimulate entire new business models like Uber. No more buying of cars, you buy rides. That didn't exist 15 years ago or 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. But that's a new business model, just starts to explode. There's shifts in the supply chain. We no longer need to do this. So there's certain companies that are going to go out of business because papers are no longer produced. That impacts all the way back to people who grow trees that used to sell to people who needed to buy paper, who then used it to print newspapers or magazines like this. There's transformative impacts throughout every aspect of when a digital revolution occurs for a given industry. So, digitization is crucial. In agriculture, you got to think of it this way, as like similar how a smartphone transformed communication. Agriculture, as it begins this digital revolution, is basically going from the old phone that used to be on the wall in the house, that used to have the dial that used to go did. Oh no, I forgot. I got to start over again, as the joke goes. It's going from the old rotary dial phone that was attached to the wall inside of the home or the office, to a basic cell phone, to the powerful computers that we now all have sitting in our pockets. And the good part for agriculture and farming is this transformation is going to happen much faster than what has happened in the communication, because the hardest thing to digitize is the physical world around us. And that's why all of these technologies and changes in the digital revolution in all of these different industries and spaces they're leading up to the digitization of our physical world because it is the most complicated thing to digitize. Digitizing a piece of paper onto a screen or several different types of screens, a computer screen, a laptop screen, a tablet screen, and a phone screen, those are just different adjustments, but all you're doing, all quote unquote, is taking something that's 2D and putting it in a space that's 2D. Representing the physical world is the most complex thing to do. And agriculture represents the most important part of the physical world that humans rely on because it is where our food comes from. So luckily, we'll be able to build on the digital revolutions that have occurred that create these patterns that we know will emerge. And as a company, agriculture intelligence is stepping into the beginning of this revolution with a proven technology that starts to move from that old rotary phone to the powerful computer that we want to have in our pocket and as agriculturalists need to have in their pocket. So it's needed because of the challenges that exist. With the growing global population, there's food safety issues, there's climate challenges. Digitization in the physical space, specifically in the agriculture space, is crucial. We need to farm smarter, not just harder. And these technologies are going to help farmers make actionably intelligent, informed decisions on everything from the basic inventory, which we discussed, to precision nutrient analysis. And it's all aimed at leveraging this digitization for a more powerful food production capability while increasing, sustainability, making the harvest over harvest as productive as the last. So we're not we're not giving the farmers a crystal ball. It's not 100%. We can't tell the future, but being able to see potential issues and leverage AI like we're doing at Agriculture Intelligence, we're able to tell a grower or a stakeholder something sooner. Like in the sooner that we can tell them something, that the sooner that they can make a decision about how to manage their resources better. And getting even these seemingly basic insights like an inventory, which every business has usually had a very firm grasp on, but agriculture, because of the challenges and the scale of the physical space alone, the challenges of getting a basic inventory have been inaccurate for many, many years. And we're now solving that problem and using digitization in other ways that aren't just basic information, but insights into more important details like the performance of the nutrients and the uptake of the nutrients, so that, again, the sooner that information can be put in the hands of someone who's very attached to the land and very attuned to the land, as all growers, they know more about their fields than anyone else in the world. But the sooner that we can give them some more accurate information, the better they'll be able to pair that with what their intuition is to make the best decision, to have the healthiest potential crop, to have the highest potential yield, to take as few actions in the field to achieve those goals. And that's what most growers are ultimately after. And that is the biggest impact of where digitization and the digital revolution of the physical space, the digital revolution in agriculture is going to be. It's getting the basic information, accurate information into the hands of the people who can make the best decisions possible to improve our food security, and improve agriculture, not just in the US or South America, but across the world.
Well, you said you cannot predict the future yet. Well, I'm pretty sure even though you cannot predict the future, you guys are, not only you, but the technology is way more precise than the guys from economy trying to predict Brazilian currency. I can assure you that. But so, Matt, moving forward and actually wrapping up, it's been a great conversation and, as usual, with great insights for our audience. My last question is about the future. How do you envision the role of technology evolving in agriculture in the next 10 years or so?
Well, like we've seen with all of these other industries, the digital revolution in agriculture is just beginning. And AI, quote unquote AI, is going to change every aspect of agriculture. Um, these other digital revolutions weren't even infused with the AI tools that we now have. So the use of geospatial imagery and data is going to provide sort of the visual spatial insights. But as we collect geospatial image over time, we have temporal analysis that becomes possible. And that spatial and temporal insights is something agriculture has never seen. And in terms of like what AgroView does, it's giving a visualization, it's giving a spatial understanding. And with every data collection we get, whether it's drones or planes, we can then apply the AI to understand each of those data points more with more clarity. And the more data points that we historically have, the better it is, and it's an advancement of what we can do on creating a more accurate prediction. Prediction of yields is very complicated. That is very much a crystal ball. But with advancements of AI and the collection of raw data and the handling of that raw data, like we do at Agriculture Intelligence through our platform, it will change how we're able to interact with agriculture over the coming decade. The advancements in low Earth orbiting satellite imagery, something we're interested in, something we want to apply our existing super resolution algorithm, which we use to make something more accurate visually, so that we can continue to have an accurate analytic. That continues to evolve. So that will provide a frequency of data availability that will enable an in-harvest cycle of insights, a temporal analysis that instead of it being done year over year, could be done quarter over quarter or month over month or week over week. The changes in data availability and the AI to handle that will provide temporal insights to an agriculture grower in ways that have just never been possible. And as a company, we continue to work on those exciting developments. We're looking at a ground-based sensor and integrating other types of sensors that already exist in the marketplace, and then using AI to pull all of those data points together and provide more accurate understanding. Again, in sort of a as real time as possible, a near real time, or in a time frame that agriculturalists and growers typically have never been able to experience, like having accurate updates across an entire orchard that's 2,000 acres wide every month is something that's just never been possible. And again, for us, the role we play in that is continuing to focus on actionable intelligence, which again is accurate, reliable, and consistent, timely, and relevant. So the future of farming will be about making better decisions with better data. And just as we've seen technology transform those other industries, agriculture is all types of agriculture are just on the cusp, the very beginning of this major transformation. So, that's the exciting part, that, we're just getting started in providing these very advanced solutions to so many out in the space that will need it in the coming years.
Matt, this has been a fascinating discussion. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with our audience. For us to wrap up here, if anyone wants to connect, learn more about your work, about agriculture intelligence, what are the best channels to connect?
Yeah, I would say the best place to connect with us is through our platform's website. It's agroview.ai. So agroview.ai, agroview.ai. That's our flagship platform. That's where all of our actionable intelligence and efforts are going towards. But from the team at Agriculture Intelligence, the best way to get a hold of us and see the work that we're doing and learn more would be to come to agroview.ai.
Again, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your vision on the future, on technology and the changes of agriculture. For our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can be updated on what's going on here. And I hope to see you guys on our next episode. Thank you all. Bye.